Documented patrol logs. Authentic visual evidence. Absolute truth. This is Bodycam incident reports.
Fast warning, get on the ground now!
Officer, I am unarmed. I'm complying. Will not lie on this concrete.
You don't get to decide! Down now!
Look at my hands. Look at your camera.
Turn around! Hands behind your back!
I'm not resisting.
Officer, you are making a catastrophic error in judgment. I am a retired lieutenant colonel in the United States Army. I am unarmed. I am complying with your request to keep my hands visible, but I will not lay on this concrete. Last warning, get on the ground. The young officer, red-faced and shaking with a mix of adrenaline and rage, didn't care about the calm baritone voice of the man standing before him. He didn't care that the man was dressed in a clean gray tracksuit and expensive running shoes. All Officer Kyle Braden saw was a large black man standing on a sidewalk where he decided he didn't belong, refusing to submit to his authority. Braden, 29 years old and only 3 years onto the force, felt his ego shrinking with every second this man remained standing. He holstered his taser and reached for his baton. But what Officer Braden didn't know, what he couldn't possibly know because he hadn't bothered to ask a single investigative question, was that the man he was threatening to beat into submission was Marcus Thorne. And Marcus Thorne had spent 20 years leading men into combat zones where discipline and rules of engagement actually mattered. He had survived IEDs in Iraq and ambushes in Afghanistan. He had retired with a Silver Star and a Purple Heart. And right now, he wasn't casing a business. He was waiting to pick up his dress blues for the funeral of a fellow soldier. The woman across the street, a nurse ending her night shift, had already started recording. She saw exactly what was happening. A calm, older black man standing like a statue, and a young, aggressive officer escalating a situation that shouldn't have even existed. Officer Marcus said, his voice dropping an octave. The command voice that had once directed battalions now focused entirely on one out-of-control patrolman. Look at my hands. They are empty. Look at my demeanor. I am not a threat. Take a breath and think about your next move, because your body camera is blinking and you are about to violate my Fourth Amendment rights in a way that will end your career. Braden didn't listen. He lunged. Before we see how this absolute travesty of justice unfolds, and believe me, it gets much worse before it gets better, I need you to do something for me. Go down to the comments section right now and tell me where you're watching from. I want to know who is out there paying attention to these stories. And if you believe that a man who served his country for 2 decades deserves better than being treated like a criminal on a street corner, hit that subscribe button. You need to see how this ends. The impact was sudden. Braden grabbed Marcus's arm, twisting it behind his back with force that was entirely unnecessary. Marcus didn't fight back. He didn't pull away. He knew that any movement, any flinch, would be used as justification for a beatdown, or worse. He let his arm be twisted. He felt the old shrapnel injury in his shoulder flare up with blinding pain, but he bit the inside of his cheek and remained silent. "Stop resisting!" Braden screamed for the benefit of the camera, a rehearsed line used to justify force against a compliant subject. "I am not resisting," Marcus said through gritted teeth. "I am submitting to an unlawful arrest under duress." "Shut up. You're under arrest for disorderly conduct and failure to obey." Braden slammed the handcuffs onto Marcus's wrists. He squeezed them tight, too tight. He wanted to hurt him. He wanted to punish him for that calm, authoritative tone. Marcus Thorne, who had commanded thousands of soldiers and negotiated with tribal leaders in active war zones, was now being shoved against the hood of a police cruiser by a man who looked like he hadn't started shaving when Marcus was already a major. The irony was bitter, but Marcus pushed it down. He switched into tactical mode. Observe. Remember. Document. To understand how we got to this point of absolute insanity, we have to rewind about 15 minutes. It was a Tuesday morning around 10 a.m. The sun was shining. The birds were singing. It was the kind of day that makes you glad to be alive. The neighborhood was a quiet, mixed-use area with small businesses and coffee shops. It wasn't a high-crime area. It wasn't a hot spot. It was just a place where people lived and worked. Marcus Thorne had arrived at Spotless Cleaners at 9:55 a.m. He parked his pristine 2022 Ford F-150, the kind of truck that costs $70,000 legally, in the marked stall in front of the shop. He got out, checked the door, and saw the handwritten sign, "Back in 15 minutes. Family emergency." It was an inconvenience, sure, but Marcus wasn't a man who got angry over small things. He had seen too much of the world to lose his temper over a delayed dry cleaner. He decided to wait. He leaned against the brick wall of the building, enjoying the morning sun. He pulled out his smartphone to check his emails. He was currently serving as a civilian consultant for veteran housing projects, and there was always work to do. He was wearing his workout clothes, a gray hoodie, black sweatpants, and high-end running shoes. He looked like exactly what he was, a fit, middle-aged man taking a break. But to some people, a black man in a hoodie standing on a corner is never just a man standing on a corner. Officer Kyle Braden turned onto the street at 10:05 a.m. Braden was bored. He was looking for activity. In police culture, especially for younger officers trying to make a name for themselves, activity meant stops, citations, and arrests. It meant showing your sergeant that you were working. Braden saw the black man leaning against the wall. He saw the hoodie. He saw the expensive truck and assumed, based on nothing but his own prejudice, that the two didn't go together. He slowed his cruiser to a crawl. He watched Marcus. Marcus looked up from his phone, made brief eye contact, and went back to reading his email. That was the trigger. In Braden's mind, the lack of fear, the lack of deference, was suspicious. Why wasn't this guy nervous? Why wasn't he leaving? Braden pulled the cruiser to the curb, blocking part of the driveway. He put the car in park and stepped out. He didn't adjust his hat or offer a wave. He dropped his hand to rest near his holster, a subtle threat that every black man in America recognizes instantly. "Hey, you," Braden called out. "What are you doing here?" Marcus looked up slowly. He didn't smile, but he wasn't aggressive. He was just calm. "Good morning, officer. I'm waiting for the dry cleaner to open." "Shop's closed," Braden said, walking closer, invading Marcus's personal space. "I'm aware. The sign says they'll be back shortly." "You live around here?" Braden asked. The classic fishing expedition. If he says yes, ask for the address. If he says no, ask what he's doing in this neighborhood. Marcus sighed internally. He knew this game. He had given lectures to young soldiers about how to interact with civilians, how not to be this guy. "Officer, is there a problem? Am I blocking the sidewalk?" "I asked you a question," Braden snapped. "Do you live around here?" "And I answered you." Marcus replied, his voice steady. "I'm waiting for a business to open. That's a lawful activity." Braden didn't like that. He was used to fear. He was used to, "Yes, sir. Sorry, sir." He wasn't used to a man standing his ground with the confidence of someone who knows exactly who they are. "You're loitering," Braden said. "Loitering requires intent to commit a crime or obstructing public passage." Marcus corrected him. "I am doing neither. I am a customer waiting for a service." "Let me see your ID," Braden demanded. This was the pivot point. This was the moment where everything could have been de-escalated if Officer Braden had just an ounce of common sense or respect for the law he was sworn to uphold. But he didn't. And Marcus Thorne, a man of principle, wasn't about to surrender his rights just to make a bully feel better. "Officer," Marcus said, placing his phone in his pocket but keeping his hand visible, "I am not going to provide my identification. You have not articulated a reasonable suspicion that I have committed a crime, am committing a crime, or am about to commit a crime. Under Terry versus Ohio and state statutes, I am not required to identify myself during a consensual encounter." Braden's face flushed a deep crimson. To him, the mention of case law wasn't a valid legal point. It was an insult. It was a challenge. "You don't tell me the law, pal. I'm the police. I'm investigating a suspicious person report. There is no report, Marcus said calmly. I've been here for 10 minutes. You just drove up. No one called you. You saw a black man standing still and you decided to fish. That's not reasonable suspicion. That's profiling. We've had break-ins in this area. Braden lied. It was the standard fabrication used to justify unlawful stops. You fit the description of a suspect. What description? Marcus pressed. Male black hoodie that describes half the city on a Saturday morning. Be specific, officer. What specific articulable facts connect me to a specific crime? Braden stepped closer, his chest puffed out, trying to physically intimidate a man who had stared down warlords. You're refusing a lawful order. Now you're obstructing an investigation. Give me your ID or you're going to jail. For what? Marcus asked. For standing on a public sidewalk, for waiting for my dry cleaning. You are escalating a non-event into a civil rights violation. I strongly suggest you call your supervisor. I don't need a supervisor to handle a vagrant. Braden sneered. A vagrant? Marcus actually laughed, a short, sharp sound. Officer, that truck right there is mine. I have the keys in my pocket. I have a ticket for this dry cleaner in my other pocket. I am a retired field-grade officer of the United States Army. If you arrest me, you are going to regret it. Braden's hand went to his radio, but not to call a supervisor. He clicked the mic. Dispatch, show me out with a non-compliant subject at the Spotless Cleaners. Male is being belligerent, requesting backup. I am not belligerent, Marcus said, speaking clearly so the body camera and the growing number of witnesses could hear. I am asserting my rights. There is a difference. Turn around, Braden barked. I'm detaining you until we figure out who you are. I am not consenting to a search, Marcus stated. I am not consenting to a seizure. I am free to go unless I am under arrest. Am I under arrest? You're about to be, Braden shouted. Get on the ground now. I have already told you, Marcus said, his voice hard as steel. I have a service-connected disability in my knees. I cannot get on the ground. I will not get on the ground. I am standing here peaceful and compliant with safety instructions, but I will not degrade myself because you have an ego problem. Braden drew his baton. The metal hissed as it expanded. I'm done asking, get down. Have you ever tried to reason with someone who has absolute power and zero wisdom? It's a dangerous place to be. Marcus knew the physics of the situation. He could disarm this child in about 3 seconds. Muscle memory from 20 years of hand-to-hand combat training was twitching in his nerves. But he also knew that if he so much as touched the officer, he would be shot, and the headline would read, Officer Involved Shooting a Violent Suspect. He had to win this with his mind, not his hands. Officer, Marcus said, look at the woman recording you across the street. Look at the man in the bakery window with his phone out. The world is watching you right now. Braden glanced around, seeing the phones. Panic flickered in his eyes, but it quickly turned back to anger. He couldn't back down now. He had committed. Hands behind your back. Do it now. The scuffle that followed was ugly, brief, and completely one-sided. Braden holstered the baton and rushed Marcus, grabbing his left wrist and wrenching it upward. It was a control hold designed to inflict pain to force the body to bow forward. Marcus grunted as his shoulder rebuilt with titanium pins after an IED blast in 2008 screamed in protest. I am not resisting, Marcus shouted, his voice booming down the street. I am allowing you to handcuff me. Stop twisting my arm. Stop fighting, Braden yelled back, breathless and frantic, fighting a ghost. He shoved Marcus against the brick wall of the dry cleaners. Marcus's cheeks scraped against the rough masonry. He didn't struggle. He planted his feet and let the officer manhandle him, ensuring that every ounce of aggression came from the badge, not the veteran. 2 more police cruisers screeched onto the scene, sirens chirping. Officers spilled out hands on their weapons. They saw a uniformed officer wrestling with a large black man and immediately assumed the worst. They rushed in. He's got a weapon. Braden lied, panicking. Watch his waistband. 3 officers grabbed Marcus. They slammed him onto the hood of Braden's car. The heat of the engine radiated through the metal. "I am unarmed," Marcus yelled. "Check my pockets. I have a phone and keys. That is it." One of the new officers, an older sergeant named Miller, quickly patted Marcus's waist. "He's clear, no weapon," Miller shouted, looking at Braden with confusion. "Braden, what do you have?" He was casing the store, refused ID, resisting arrest. Braden was panting, sweat dripping down his face. "He's in cuffs. Kyle, ease up." Sergeant Miller pulled Braden back. Miller looked at Marcus. He saw the gray hair, the calm eyes, the quality of the clothes. He saw the lack of panic. Miller's gut tightened. He had been a cop for 25 years. He knew the difference between a criminal and a mistake. This felt like a mistake. "Sir," Miller said to Marcus, who was now double-locked in cuffs and leaning against the cruiser, "are you injured?" "My shoulder is surgically reconstructed," Marcus said, his voice regaining that icy calm. "Your officer just tried to tear it out of the socket. I told him I was a disabled veteran. He didn't care." Miller looked at Braden. Braden looked away. "Get him in the car," Braden said defensively. "I'm taking him in. Failure to identify. Resisting. Disorderly." Miller hesitated. "You sure about this, Braden? What was the PC probable cause for the stop?" "Suspicious behavior," Braden insisted. He wouldn't answer questions. Miller looked at Marcus again. Marcus met his gaze. "Sergeant," Marcus said, "my wallet is in my back right pocket. Before you let him drive me away, I suggest you look at who you are arresting." "We'll do that at booking," Braden interrupted, grabbing Marcus by the arm and shoving him toward the back seat. "Get in." Marcus had to twist his body painfully to fit into the cramped plastic seat of the patrol car. The door slammed shut, sealing him in. The smell of stale vomit and industrial disinfectant filled his nose. He leaned his head back against the plexiglass divider. He closed his eyes. He had fought for the freedom of people in countries most Americans couldn't find on a map. He had buried friends who died wearing the American flag on their shoulders. And now, on a sunny Tuesday morning, he was caged like an animal because he dared to wait for his dry cleaning while black. The rage was there deep in his gut, burning like a coal, but he suffocated it. Rage wouldn't help him now. Discipline would. He opened his eyes and watched Officer Braden get into the driver's seat. Braden adjusted the rearview mirror, catching Marcus's eye. Braden smirked. It was a look of triumph. "I won. You lost." "You made a big mistake, pal," Braden said. "Officer," Marcus said softly, "you have no idea." The drive to the precinct was short, maybe 10 minutes. Braden didn't speak again. He turned up the radio, blasting talk radio, trying to drown out the silence coming from the back seat. He was pumping himself up, rehearsing the narrative he would write in his report. Subject was hostile. Subject took a fighting stance. Subject refused lawful commands. He was building a castle of lies to protect his pension. When they arrived at the precinct, Braden pulled into the sally port. The heavy garage door rumbled shut behind them, cutting off the sunlight. Braden hauled Marcus out of the car. "Walk," Braden commanded. They entered the processing area. It was a sterile room with linoleum floors and fluorescent lights that buzzed. There were benches with metal loops for handcuffs. A high desk stood at the front where the watch commander sat. The watch commander on duty was Sergeant Thomas "Mac" McKenzie. Mac was 55 years old, a former Marine, and a man who took no nonsense. He was typing a report when Braden walked in with Marcus. Mac looked up. He saw Braden looking disheveled and aggressive. Then he looked at the prisoner. Mac stopped typing. He squinted. "Braden," Mac said, his voice suspicious. "What do we have here?" "Disorderly conduct resisting failure to ID," Braden rattled off. Guy was acting crazy at the shopping center on 5th. Refused to comply. Mac stood up. He walked around the desk. He looked at Marcus. Marcus stood tall despite the handcuffs. He looked Mac in the eye. "Permission to speak, Sergeant," Marcus said. It was a military courtesy, a reflex. Mac's eyes widened. He recognized the cadence. "Go ahead." "I am Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Thorne, United States Army retired. I request that you remove these handcuffs immediately and call the Chief of Police." Braden laughed. "Yeah, and I'm the King of England. He's a loiterer Sarge. He wouldn't even give me a name." Mac ignored Braden. He walked up to Marcus. "Thorne," Mac asked, "you the one who runs the Veteran Outreach Program? The one who sits on the Civilian Oversight Commission?" "That is correct," Marcus said. The color drained from Braden's face so fast it looked like he was about to faint. The room went dead silent. The Civilian Oversight Commission wasn't just a volunteer group. They had the power to subpoena police records. They were the body that investigated police misconduct. "Braden," Mac said, his voice low and dangerous. "Did you search him?" "Just a pat down for weapons," Braden stammered. Mac walked behind Marcus. "I'm going to reach into your pocket, Colonel." "Go ahead, Sergeant." Mac pulled out the wallet. He opened it. The first thing he saw was the blue Department of Defense retiree ID card with the rank Lieutenant Colonel. The second thing he saw was the heavy gold badge of the City Oversight Commissioner. Mac looked at the ID. He looked at the badge. He looked at Braden. "You arrested a commissioner," Mac whispered. "You arrested a colonel for... what exactly?" He wouldn't show ID," Braden said, his voice cracking. "He was acting suspicious." Mac closed the wallet. He took a deep breath. He didn't yell. It was worse than yelling. He looked at Braden with pure disappointment. "Uncuff him," Mac said. "But Sarge, the paperwork..." "Uncuff him now!" Mac roared, the Marine Corps coming out of him. "And then give me your badge and your gun and get in the captain's office. Do not pass go. Do not speak to anyone." Braden's hands shook as he unlocked the cuffs. As soon as the metal clicked open, Marcus brought his hands forward. He rubbed his wrists. There were deep red indentations where the metal had bitten into his skin. "Colonel," Mac said, "I am incredibly sorry. I don't know what to say." Marcus looked at Braden, who was shrinking into the corner. "Don't apologize for him, Sergeant," Marcus said. "Just get me the chief, and preserve every second of that body camera footage, because if one frame of it goes missing, I will own this entire building." Chief Robert Harrison arrived 20 minutes later. He had been at a Rotary Club lunch when the call came in from Sergeant Mackenzie. The message was brief. "Braden arrested Commissioner Thorne. It's bad. Get here." When Harrison walked into the station, the atmosphere was like a funeral. Officers were whispering in corners. Braden was sequestered in an interrogation room without his weapon. Marcus was sitting in the sergeant's office nursing a cup of coffee, his dress blues claim ticket sitting on the desk next to his phone. Harrison, a man of 60 with graying temples and a reputation for being a reformer, walked straight to Marcus. He didn't offer a handshake he knew better than to touch a man who had just been assaulted by his staff. He stood at attention. "Colonel Thorne," Harrison said. "I am mortified." "Chief," Marcus nodded. He didn't stand up. "You have a problem with your personnel." "I know," Harrison said. "We've reviewed the footage already." Mackenzie pulled it. "I watched it in the car on the way here." And it's defenseless," Harrison admitted. "There was no probable cause. The stop was bad from the first second. The escalation was unlawful. The use of force was excessive." "He twisted my arm, Bob," Marcus said, using the chief's first name. They had met at charity events. "I have a screwed-up shoulder from an IED in 08. Your boy tried to rip it off because I told him the law." Harrison winced. I'm so sorry, Marcus. We are dropping all charges immediately. Obviously, you are free to go. We'll drive you back to your car. We'll handle Braden internally. Marcus set his coffee cup down. The ceramic clinked loudly on the desk. No, Marcus said. Harrison paused. No? I'm not just walking out of here, Bob. If I walk out of here with a sorry and a ride home, that kid gets a slap on the wrist, maybe a suspension. Then he's back on the street in 2 weeks doing this to some kid who doesn't have a rank, who doesn't have a badge, who doesn't know the law. That kid ends up with a resisting charge that ruins his life. Or worse, he ends up dead. Marcus stood up then, wincing slightly as his shoulder moved. I want full documentation. I want a copy of the arrest report. I want the body cam footage released to my attorney by tomorrow morning. I am filing a formal complaint, and I am filing a federal lawsuit. Marcus, Harrison said, his voice pleading slightly, we can settle this. You know a lawsuit will drag the department through the mud. Your officer dragged the department through the mud when he put handcuffs on an innocent man because he didn't like my skin color and my attitude. Marcus shot back. I fought for this country, Bob. I served 20 years. I didn't do that so I could be treated like a suspect in my own neighborhood. I won't surrender my rights here any more than I would have surrendered to the enemy overseas. Harrison looked at Marcus. He saw the resolve. He knew he couldn't talk him out of it, and deep down he knew Marcus was right. Okay, Harrison said quietly. Okay, you'll have the footage. You'll have the report. We'll do it by the book. By the book, Marcus repeated. That's all I ever asked for. If Braden had followed the book, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Marcus walked out of the office. He walked past the booking desk. He walked past the rows of officers who couldn't look him in the eye. He walked out into the sunlight. He called an Uber. He wasn't going to ride in a police car again, not today. The lawsuit, Thorne versus the city, was filed 3 days later. It wasn't just a complaint. It was a dissection. Marcus's lawyer, a shark of a civil rights attorney named Elaine Powers, laid out the case with surgical precision: violation of the Fourth Amendment, unlawful seizure; violation of the First Amendment, retaliation for speech, battery, false imprisonment. But the real bomb dropped when the body camera footage was released. Marcus had insisted on transparency, and the chief, knowing he had no choice, released the unedited video to the press. It went viral within hours. The video was damning. It showed the bright sunny day. It showed Marcus standing peacefully. It showed Braden's aggressive approach. It captured the audio perfectly. Marcus's calm legal explanations contrasted with Braden's screaming and insecurity. The moment where Braden twisted the arm of a compliant veteran caused a collective gasp across the nation. News outlets picked it up. Veteran arrested while waiting for dry cleaning. Hero handcuffed by rookie. The comments section on the video was a war zone, but 99% of the fire was directed at Officer Braden. Veterans groups mobilized. The VFW, the American Legion, and the DAV all issued statements condemning the arrest. They showed up at city council meetings. They demanded accountability. Then came the discovery phase of the lawsuit. Elaine Powers requested Officer Braden's disciplinary history and his stop logs. The city tried to fight it, claiming personnel privacy, but a federal judge who happened to be a Vietnam vet ordered them to hand it over. The files revealed a pattern. Officer Braden had been on the force for 3 years. In that time, 85% of his suspicious person stops involved black men. He had stopped a black doctor for walking his dog. He had stopped a black mail carrier for looking lost. He had never found a weapon. He had never made a significant felony arrest. He was a harasser with a badge. The city's defense crumbled. They couldn't claim qualified immunity. Qualified immunity protects officers who make reasonable mistakes in unclear situations. There was nothing unclear about this. The law regarding reasonable suspicion had been settled for decades. Braden had knowingly violated it. During the deposition, Braden sat across from Marcus. Braden looked smaller now out of uniform, wearing a cheap suit. He refused to make eye contact. "Officer Braden," Elaine Powers asked, "can you articulate right now what crime you suspected Mr. Thorne of committing when you first approached him?" Braden shifted in his chair. He looked out of place. "Is looking out of place a crime in the penal code?" "No." "Did you have a report of a crime?" "No." "So you detained a United States military officer, assaulted him, and deprived him of his liberty because you didn't like the way he looked?" Braden didn't answer. He didn't have to. The silence screamed the truth. The city settled the case for $2 million. It was one of the largest settlements for a single plaintiff civil rights case in the city's history. They wanted to avoid a jury trial at all costs. They knew a jury would look at Marcus Thorne, dignified, decorated, articulate, and then look at Kyle Braden, and they might award $10 million just out of spite. But for Marcus, it was never about the money. 2 weeks after the settlement check cleared, Marcus held a press conference. He stood on the steps of the Veterans Center he helped manage. He was wearing a suit, looking every bit the leader he was. "Justice was served on paper today," Marcus told the reporters. "But justice isn't just a check. Justice is change." He announced that he was donating the entire $2 million settlement. Half would go to the Thorne Legal Defense Fund, a new nonprofit dedicated to providing legal representation for veterans who were victims of police misconduct. The other half would go to local youth mentorship programs to help bridge the gap between the community and law enforcement. As for Officer Kyle Braden, he was fired. The internal affairs investigation, fueled by the pressure of the lawsuit and the public outcry, found him guilty of multiple policy violations. The state licensing board decertified him, meaning he could never work as a police officer in that state again. He was last heard of working security at a warehouse in another county, checking trucks at a gate. The dry cleaner eventually apologized too, though it wasn't their fault. The owner gave Marcus free dry cleaning for life. Marcus accepted it with a smile. But the story ends in a quiet moment. A few months later, Marcus was back at the same dry cleaner. It was another Tuesday. The sun was shining. He picked up his dress blues. He walked to his truck and carefully hung the uniform in the back seat. He touched the sleeve of the jacket, feeling the fabric. He thought about the oath he had taken at 22 years old. To support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. He realized that domestic didn't always mean a terrorist or a spy. Sometimes the enemy of the Constitution was a man in a uniform who forgot that his power was a loan from the people, not a gift from God. Sometimes defending the Constitution meant standing on a sidewalk in handcuffs and refusing to break. Marcus got in his truck. He looked in the rearview mirror. He saw a police car drive by. The officer inside waved at him. It was a new guy, someone young. Marcus didn't flinch. He waved back. He wasn't afraid. He had served his time. He had fought his wars, and he had won this one too. Folks, let this sink in. A man gives 20 years of his life to protect our freedom only to have it snatched away in 15 minutes by a bias he couldn't control. It's a hard pill to swallow, but it's the reality we need to fix. What would you have done if you were in Marcus's shoes? Would you have kept your cool, or would you have fought back? Drop a comment below. I read every single one. And please share this story. We need to remind the world that true patriotism isn't about the flag on your sleeve. It's about the rights you defend for your neighbor. Stay safe, stay vigilant, and I'll see you in the next one.
Our review is now complete. For more unedited field recordings, remember to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching Bodycam Incident Reports.